The flea market. When I was 14, I was a mess. I was already in trouble with the law a lot and had gotten kicked out of school multiple times for fighting. I wasn't exactly the boy my father had hoped to have raised, but at least I thought I was tough. That is, until Halloween night of 1989. That night changed my demeanor forever and probably helped shape me into the mature man I became to be honest. My friends and I were bored that cool October evening and somehow had made our way into the town's biggest flea market, browsing around the antiques, sifting through old comic books, and mostly just messing around. The antique store was called Curious Antiques, and boy were they curious. Creepy department store mannequins from the late 70s and 80s were all over the store. Just a bunch of strange old stuff that was laughable to a kid my age. My friends and I wandered around each booth horseplaying until about 6:30. I needed to be home by 7 to take my younger brother trick-or-treating. Well, that's when my friends dared me to spend Halloween night in this creepy place. Being a cocky teenager, I said yes because there was money involved, and I had plans of going out the back exit an hour after the owners left. I figured I could just hide in the store and tell my friends that I stayed there all night, because that would make me brave and even more formidable. Well, it was the biggest mistake of my life. Me and my best friend shook hands on a $20 bet as they began to leave the store. They giggled and laughed, covered their mouths, and I watched from the back, hidden behind a wall of cardboard that separated one booth from another. I hoped the owners wouldn't realize I was missing. Well, when the lights went out, I got my wish. Nobody came back to look for me. I sat quietly between two old refrigerators the owners used in the back. I waited about 5 minutes and then got up. I opened a fridge and snatched a Dr. Pepper. I closed the door only to realize I was drinking in pitch blackness. That's when the first sensation of fear shot through me. It was a foreign feeling because I had never really been scared of anything or anybody, especially not the dark. But this wasn't my room, and this dark was the darkest black I had ever imagined, if that makes any sense. And this place was the most silent place I had ever been in. It was creepy. I trembled as I took another sip. I thought about possibly going out the front door, but I knew that would signal an alarm. Where was the back door? I thought. I finished the drink, but was still frozen in place. It took all of my childhood defiance to just take a few steps forward. I remembered my keychain in my pocket had a small flashlight on it. I turned it on as it barely illuminated the aisles in front of me. This building was huge looking back on it. To this day, it's easily the biggest flea market I had ever stepped into. A kid could have easily gotten lost in that place, which is exactly what I did. I suddenly wondered what I was supposed to do here all night and instantly regretted this decision. I tried to walk down an aisle, but it was really dark. I shined my light on a small booth. It lit up some old dolls that looked like they were 50 years old or something. But it wasn't really the dolls that creeped me out, it was more the mannequins. Obviously, the owner of the antique store had some type of infatuation with them because there was one nearly in every booth, almost like a guard, protecting these dusty old collectibles. I shined my light on the shoes of a mannequin wearing a 1940s-style gangster hat. I slowly lifted my arm, the light going up the mannequin's chest. I opened my mouth wide as this dim light glazed over its white face and body. It stiffly held out a knife in its right hand, and its left a cigar. Who keeps stuff like that in these kind of places? I couldn't fathom it. My heart thumped. I backed up and I nearly tripped over something. My breathing intensified. Had my friends placed the knife in its hand? There's no way they could have been that thoughtful. All I know is I wanted out of this place, and I wanted out now. I walked as fast as I could without tripping over anything, but I could not find the front of the store. It was just endless aisles of old crap. I decided to walk back down an aisle and head to the back when my light shot across the most disturbing thing I've ever seen in my life. It was another mannequin, but this one was different. It was like it was almost not human. Standing well over 6 feet tall with long bony arms made of woven and intertwined sticks was a sight still to this day that gives me nightmares. The face was blue with black eyes, white pieces of styrofoam for pupils. Somebody had erected a zipper-like mouth with red stains around it. There, in the dark of that flea market, my light illuminating this ghastly sight, I screamed for the first time in my life, and I didn't stop. I screamed until the blood rushed to my face and I became dizzy. Then I ran as fast as I could, tripping over a steel rack that served as a booth, and I fell hard, hitting my kneecap on the cold cement floor. Pain shot up through my leg and my knee throbbed, but I just bit my lip. That is until I lifted my light to see the blue-faced demonic mannequin standing in the middle of the aisle now. It towered over me as I agonized in pain, but that pain was soon given way by outright fear. This thing was tall, skinny, and creepy, and it was moving. This thing lumbered towards me as I screamed again, suddenly forgetting I had even fell. I jumped up like a stick of dynamite went off under my ass and ran. 4 hours over, I stopped and dashed into a booth that ducked behind some old rocking chair that had a quilt over it. I just wanted to hide and catch my breath. My heart was exploding through my chest. I would have given anything in my life to be out of that place, but I was again frozen in fear, unable to move, with no courage to calm down, because I had seen this thing walk. As I sat still, my breathing finally calmed a little after a few minutes. I was nauseous, but didn't know why. Looking back on it, I realized that I was having my first real anxiety attack. I listened. 15 minutes must have went by. I stood, finally, thinking about another attempt at the front of the store to maybe find a phone or a light switch. Then I heard a noise again. It was like a raspy type breathing. Of course, upon hearing this, I about freaked again. Somebody or something was definitely in this place with me. That was obvious. I kept quiet, my breaths like hot puffs of fear escaping my mouth. The noise crept closer and my heart began to beat harder again. I felt as though I may vomit. Tears filled my eyes as I covered my mouth, my stomach turning. I didn't even care I was crying at that point. I shined my light on a corner section of an aisle only to see the head of this thing peering directly at me. It was as tall as the top of the rack. I screamed again, this time louder than before. This thing moaned, its mouth opening. That was it. I pushed the chair out of the way and ran towards the front. I could hear this thing lumbering behind me clumsily. You want to talk about fear. I finally saw some dim lighting and realized it was street lights. I found the exit, lunging for the door. Before I was able to escape, this thing grabbed me and flipped me back around, letting out some type of loud shriek. God, it was inhuman. There's no way this thing could have been a human. It was trying to take me back into the store. With all the strength I had left, I shoved it, feeling nothing but sticks and a hollow chest cave with the force of my hands. It staggered back as I stood outside looking at it. Out in the street, crying, I watched in horror as it stood there before finally disappearing into the darkness of the store. I knew this thing wasn't among the living, but what was it? I ran all the way home and was happy to be grounded for the next 3 weeks. The next day, my parents went to the flea market and apologized to the owners, paying any damage I might have racked up. They didn't mention the mannequin because they hadn't believed me. I'm 30 years old now. 5 years after the incident when I was 19, I had finally gotten enough courage to go back to the store to face my fears. Sure enough, that mannequin-looking monster was still stationed at the same booth with no price tag. It had not been a person, and I had knew that. Needless to say, I have not been back to a flea market since.